Hey, we're so excited to be back with you after this holiday season. We trust you've launched into this new year with great faith and expectation that the Lord's going to do incredible things in your life and in the lives of His church. Today, we're going to talk about the blessing we got this first week of a brand new year. Not one tyrant taken out, but two tyrants taken out. We're going to identify who those tyrants are and talk about the implications for America and for the world. That'll be in our podcast today. We hope you'll enjoy it.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Hey, we are so excited to be back with you guys after what I hope is an amazing holiday season and kicking off a brand new, exciting year. Although I do want to interrupt this podcast with breaking news. Living Stones is currently under siege. There's no way you can get into our building. Every entry exit is blocked by NIPSCO. They're planting large trees, beams, poles everywhere. And it took you like forever. I mean, it's amazing you're seeing Pastor Andrew on this podcast today.
I mean, I was driving around the church 7 times, and then about to make a primal scream and see if these walls will come down.
Don't be walking around the church 7 times. We already have walls that came down.
The church wall, the NIPSCO wall might come down.
You got to be precise on that, because the last thing we need is another roof collapsing or something.
I don't know how they can design it so well that every single one of our 30 exits or entrances was covered. I literally drove all around the block, eventually had to park down the street. It's not that far, I'm not complaining, but I was just like, what is going on? I couldn't get to the church. So
someday I guess we're going to be thankful for all of this because we're getting new
we
poles,
do lose
new
power
wires
all the time. So power outage all the time. So hopefully they'll fix some of that. Yeah.
So if you're planning on coming to the church anytime this week, I can't make any promises. Leave early. Leave about 3 days early, and you should get here all right.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to New Year. Sunday we kicked off a new series called New. Pretty creative, huh? And it was very creative. I appreciate our creative team. But the whole idea was every new year we have a fresh start. And I don't know about you, but I love that. And I love being able to kind of put a pause, look at all the great things God's done this past year. In fact, Matthew, I can let the cat out of the bag here. You're going to be creating an end of the year kind of recap video here. So we're going to be able to celebrate. A lot has happened. And obviously with what we're called to do, it all involves people and life change and salvation and freedom and all of that good stuff. But always excited about that. So it's good to look back. It's good to look forward. And I don't know about you. Have you thought about what you appreciated from last year, what you want to carry over, any personal goals? I talked about doing a life audit on Sunday.
Well, I mean, I did make a list of the lessons I learned in 2025, and there are many, and they're very painful. My wife and I went on a date night last Friday, and we actually talked through that and just look at our development and growth. The problem is a lot of times you grow, you learn your lessons, and you forget it because you don't audit it and you don't reflect on it.
Yeah, that's good.
So made a list of things I learned, and I want to go back and reflect on that. A lot of it's relationship. A lot of it is realizing some of the stuff you preached on yesterday, looking back on some of the painful experience of my past and how that influenced me now and how those emotions influence me and how I can grow out those emotions. So that's really helpful. But like I told you earlier, yearly goals are a little too long for me. I do quarterly goals. Mm-hmm. So the same thing with the business I work for. We go from quarterly goals so we can be a little more locked in.
Yeah, and share about that because I think this is really good. Sometimes, we start off with this year goal. We want to lose X amount of pounds by the end of the year. Why are year goals as opposed to quarterly goals not so much effective? Why do you go for the shorter span?
Some research have shown that 3 months is pretty much all the focus you can have to accomplish something. So beyond that 3 months, you lose focus. So quarterly goals are really helpful. Now, if you have a yearly goal and you create quarterly kind of checkpoints to kind of achieve that, that's the most effective way. But not everyone can do that. So, no, I make a quarterly checklist of the things I really don't want to do. For me, it's stuff around the house. I hate working on my house. It makes me feel
you're a handyman like me, so
exactly.
that comes easy for us.
So I made a list of things that I really need to accomplish. All the things the hard things I don't want to do, I reserve that for Q1 and Q2. And Q3 and Q4, I kind of do more of the fun things I want to do. So that's kind of more. And my other personal goals and business goals, those are kind of fun things for me to do. So I try to get the hard things out of the way, the things I really don't want to do, like medical checkups and fixing my driveway and stuff like that. Things I don't want to think about. But they need to be done.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, and I established some health goals, training goals, and things like that. And I got smart. I said, I know I'm supposed to do X amount of steps, supposedly, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do 3 months and get consistent with this amount, and then I'm going to increase it the next 3 months, and then by the end of the year, I'll build myself up to it. It's kind of like training to run a marathon, right? You don't go out and run 26 miles to train for the marathon. You start off with bite-sized pieces. Not that I've ever run a marathon, but I've heard people say that.
But that perspective is super helpful, because a lot of times people say time is our enemy, right?
Yeah.
But what this does when you cascade and when you build slowly, you actually make time your friend. It's like compound investing, right? So in this way, as time goes, you cascade or you build one goal. Say you want to do 5,000. You talk about 5,000 steps a day. Now you're going to build that 5,000 to 7,000. So as time goes on, you actually get stronger. So it's really a mentality shift that you're in for the long haul. You don't go against time. You let time work for you. It's the same idea of compound investing.
Yeah, and it's like you I've talked about before, habit stacking.
Yeah.
When you get consistent with your time when you do it and you get into a pattern, it's easy to build upon that.
Exactly.
If you try to do too much too soon, you don't ever establish the pattern, and it all just falls apart.
Well, that's what successful people do. They really work that stacking. So as they, Warren Buffett just recently retired. He's worth, I don't know how many billions of dollars, but he's in his 80s. You're like, he's got a lot of money, but he's in his 80s. He's been investing for 50, 60 years. How do you get billions of dollars? Because he just starts stacking that over time.
Right. In fact, I heard most of his wealth was created, like say in the last 20 years of his life.
Mm-hmm. Because it hits that compound effect, right?
Yeah.
So
there's hope for all of us. And even when it comes to like, patterns such as, man, I'd love to read the Bible more this year. I encourage folks, get into a daily Bible reading plan, and it's just bite size and work it every day. Set aside a time. And by the end of the year, you'll have, completely read through the Bible, which a lot of Christians have not ever done that. They've read different passages of the Bible, but they've never read the Bible, from cover to cover. And that's very, very important to get a good, broad, comprehensive understanding of Scripture. Same thing with prayer. Same thing with tithing. Starting off the year financially. It's interesting to me that the only place in the Bible where God actually says, test me, try me, prove me, is in the area of our finances and with tithing. So I always like to tell people, man, God's basically saying, I dare you. And then the only way you experience that type of freedom and blessing and managing the resources that God's entrusted us is to do that. And then you see that God's word is true and He provides. So I really encourage everybody, do an audit quickly here in this first part of the year. I think I said most people's New Year's resolutions are broken by the 8th or 9th day of the new year.
Yeah.
So the good news is just start after the 8th or 9th day with your resolutions. and then you'll be breaking the curve.
Well, here's a secret: is you got to write it down. That's why people journal.
Yeah,
that's why journaling is so powerful, because you don't write it down. Guess what? You're not gonna. I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah,
you're not gonna remember what you did 3 months later.
Yeah.
So you got to write it down. You put it in your mirror. I have a whiteboard. You slap it right there. Every time working on my computer, as I look up, it's right there in front of me. Like, I can't miss that.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Writing it down, and I think too, putting things on your calendar, actually blocking out time. Like if you say, I want to every quarter go away with my wife and spend time talking, dreaming, having fun together. Well, if you don't get that on your calendar, it ain't going to happen. Same thing with so many other things in life. So that calendar is so important. But I do want to read Isaiah 43 was our text from last Sunday on the new series, Isaiah 43, verse 18. God says, forget all of that. And of course, all of that he was referring to was the exodus from Egypt, which was massive. God says, it's nothing compared to what I'm going to do, for I'm about to do something new. I encouraged our congregation to raise our expectations in terms of believing that what God has in store for us, like that even our best day, our most amazing deliverance, experience, healing, blessing, answers of prayer is nothing compared to what God wants to do. And we'll be able to say that until the Lord comes or until we pass away. So that having expectation, having faith, believing God is so important as we move into the new year and maximize, the blessings. Now, let's get into what we want to talk about today. Talk about blessings. We not only got rid of one tyrant, we got rid of two tyrants in 1 week. This is so great. Two tyrants down in 1 week. Of course, we know the one tyrant was the unelected or stolen election leader of Venezuela. But the other tyrant, which we'll talk about first, is Tim Walz. God help us. He is not running for governor. Imagine that. I can't imagine why he would not run for governor. I mean, he's doing such a great job up there. We're watching this welfare fraud growing to monstrous proportions. In fact, right now they believe it to be about $9 billion. 9B, and that's hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And when I guess what I want to say, when you put this fraud, welfare fraud situation with the Doge, for instance, and you think of all the corruption, all the shell companies, all the fraud, all the paybacks, kickbacks, all the wasted taxpayer dollars. I mean, think about the average American that's trying to make ends meet. We're talking about, affordability, right? Can't afford a house, grocery prices have gone up, all this kind of stuff. And just think about the level of fraud and the waste and the corruption and what that does to drive up things like affordability and costs. Yeah. And we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg. I mean, they're praise the Lord, they're doing a federal investigation and really doing a deep dive into this, but it's systemic. It's and the other thing is the magnitude of it. Not only $9 billion, we'll put that in perspective in just a moment, but this has been going on for 15 years. So this is not like, oops, we didn't catch it. This has been going on under the watchful eye of all of these elected officials, including law enforcement, who have just turned, a blank eye to all of this and pretending like it's not there. Of course, they're all getting money on the side or paybacks or whatever. But I was looking at the scope of this. Listen to this. The Minnesota welfare scandal is unprecedented in two ways. Number one, the amount of taxpayer money that's been stolen. The current conservative estimate puts the number closer to $10 billion. In this case, if Trump were to say that nobody has seen anything like it, he would be correct, because it has been described as the worst case of taxpayer fraud in American history. But listen to this. At this point, the theft is equivalent to the entire gross national product of Somalia. Ponder that.
It's not funny.
That's funny on a lot of ways, but it's incredibly sad. The amount of money stolen would have funded the entire nation of Somalia. That's 5 times more than the entire budget of Minneapolis and 3 times more than the projected deficit in the Minnesota state budget. And the amount of fraud is expected to increase significantly as the investigations continue. It says the fraud was committed in plain view of the community, of law enforcement, government agencies, the media, and political leadership. There was no attempt to conceal the fraud. I mean, this is staggering. And yet all Tim Walz can say is Trump's a racist. And Trump's using this to push his MAGA right conservative immigration attacks, and now he's focusing on these poor Somali people. And And that's the best that he has. There's not one bit of, you know what, this is wrong. This is sad. I failed. I should have done a better job. I mean, there's no ownership whatsoever of $9 billion worth of fraud that we know of so far. I don't know what to say. It's beyond comprehension to me. Like if this happened, if you're a private business owner and you stole $9 billion,
someone should go to jail.
And they would be swift. Yeah. Right. But because these people are politicians, we just act like, oh, well, I don't know, $9 billion. I don't know where that went. I don't know where it was lost from the budget or whatever. And we find all of these egregious cases of corruption. It's like we're living in parallel universes.
Well, then you do California. You're wondering what happened to the money, the billions of dollars that goes through high-speed rail, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just,
end. Yeah.
And then, of course, we could talk about it on a lot of levels. Like, if you and I did this, we'd be in jail. Two tiers of justice. All of that. We've hit on a lot of that.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this because what I've learned and what I heard is kind of what you heard. I don't have any inside information, but my perspective is this: like, it's easy to say we got to go in and clean house. When they have Doge, when they have Elon Musk goes in and he basically comes out, he basically throws his hands and says, I can't do this. Okay, this is a guy who sent rockets to space and reused them. He's like, I can't do this. I think I'm getting a better picture of why. Because when systemic for decades in which everyone's getting a handout, so you go and become a congressman, you go in and becomes a federal FBI agent or whatever it is, you go be a state senator, and there is a degree of handout that's kind of part of that. You get elected and you say, well, I'm going to reform. You don't accept a handout. You call it out. You are out on the fringe already. There is no leverage for you to get in there. Now,
yeah, and just to be clear, we're not suggesting that there's only Democratic corruption. No, we know there's corruption on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And there's skeletons in the closet, which is why a lot of times, like you pointed out, when something is exposed, nothing ever happens.
Yeah, because everyone's kind of in on it, and even if you're innocent, you're getting no traction because you get pushed out. Now, what I think the Trump administration, what I see is they're navigating that very carefully because you can't just go ahead and offend everybody because you need those guys to help you vote.
Yeah, right? It's a tricky situation.
That's why it's so complicated. Now, Musk, a business guy, goes in, and I get his perspective. He just wants to cut. He just wants to expose. He just wants to get things done. But politicians recognize that you got to build consensus. I can't offend these guys yet, and I can't expose these guys because I need their vote for me to get this. You are always negotiating between. Again, this is why I can't be a politician because I can't handle that.
Well, and it's funny because when I was in grad school out at Regent, I was considering going into law, and one of the guys said, "Well, the nature of law is compromise.
Yeah.
And the nature of government is compromise." And he says, I think you'd be terrible. And as I thought about it, I'm like, exactly, because if you have a high sense of justice, right and wrong.
This is black, this is white.
Yeah.
This is right,
then you're shafted, right? Like you said, as soon as you stand up on principle, you get pushed to the side.
But I also understand where the if you want to be a reformer, you don't get to just come in like a bull in China shop. You have to negotiate through these proper means, and you have to compromise sometimes to get the greater good. There's a place for that. So it's just why does that take so long to be exposed and whatever? Because I bet there's some good people who want to expose. I was listening to that video by Nick Shirley, the 24-year-old who went. He's like, everyone knows there was corruption for decades. Everyone knew about it. It was just like no one did anything about it because it's so hard to gain traction. Now, what's interesting is what does expose it is public outcry because of these independent journalists who don't have any stake. They don't care what senators
as much as I hate social media on certain angles, right? Yeah. The downside of it, where would we be without social media and the freedom to like for Nick Shirley, he bypasses all the mainstream media. He's got no credentialing, and he exposes more corruption as a novice with a camera and a phone, than the entire mainstream media, which is scary to me too. We talked about this that everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody is just absolutely ideologically blind. that we can't even call corruption. We can't even say, oh, this is wrong, that we're taking taxpayer dollars and letting it be exploited like this. I mean, it's like, can we not agree? Like, it's almost like we're living in a world right now between the progressive left and those Christian conservatives maybe on the other side, where there's no, like, if we said the sky is blue, can we agree? No, it's not. Your sweater's blue. No, it's orange. I mean, it's just like, how do you even live in a world where you're so ideologically opposite to where the most obvious things, basic right and wrong, lying, stealing, cheating, these are wrong. Violence, this is wrong. We can't even agree anymore. And sometimes I just go, I'm looking here, 10 different Democrats and corporate media leap to defend Somalis despite massive fraud. We're talking $10 billion of fraud, biggest fraud in the history of America. And everybody's, wiping away their crocodile tears. We're so sorry for what this administration's doing to you poor Somali people. You're welcome. We love you. You're helping build our community while you're stealing $9 billion. I mean, what planet? It's like this toxic empathy, that we've talked about, this fake compassion, when we should be angry at the abuse and at the thievery that's happened. And yet, I don't, like you said, if there's not outrage by the average American citizen, and I would speak to the people of Minnesota, then you're not going to see any change. It's got to be from the grassroots, because it's certainly not going to happen from the politicians.
Well, I mean, I don't think the courts are going to do anything. I don't think the department. I mean, maybe the Department of Justice. The federal Department of Justice will do something. I mean, I think maybe the biggest consequence is Tim Walz is not running for governor next year, which I'm actually surprised by that there's enough consequences that's not happening. I'm surprised by that, because in the world that I know of, he will go on and just keep running. They'll keep voting him in, and they won't even care. The people in Minnesota don't even care, because he got the votes, right? Well, he's bought the votes, right?
Okay, so, and then I used to think, what is the matter with people in Minnesota? How do they keep electing these people? But when you look at this amount of fraud, and now we're seeing that a lot of the things that we all knew were common sense, like there's no way we go to sleep at night and the Republican candidates winning by a landslide, and we wake up in the morning and all the votes came in overnight and it reversed the election. Oh, wow, the Democrat won. No, this was wholesale election fraud that's been happening. It's finally being exposed, like in Georgia. And I'm wondering, in a lot of these places, is this how these people are getting elected? I mean, I don't think the average person in Illinois wants to be taxed to death and wants to have all this crazy leftist progressive nonsense shoved down their throat. There's got to be massive election fraud happening. And so maybe it's not the citizens out there are going, wow, we really like these wacko folks like Tim Walz. No, they don't. They've been trying to get rid of these guys for years. But if there's fraud over in one area and corruption, it doesn't surprise me there would be fraud in every area. Yeah, whatever you got to do to stay elected.
And maybe they're just like, there's no good candidates. They're all corrupt.
Yeah.
So they just stay home, and the people shouldn't be voting, otherwise shouldn't be voting.
So, we feel sorry for the folks of Venezuela who have had to live with rigged elections, but I think in America we've had a lot of rigged elections, and we've seen these schemes of bringing in illegals, giving them full benefits, and allowing an illegal person in your country to vote in an election, which is mind-boggling to me. I don't know if you just, we just talked about judges. I just saw where a judge struck down a ruling that said it was illegal to give illegals in this country driver's licenses. And the courts struck it down and said, no, it's not illegal. How can you give, again, the right to drive and move about your country to somebody who's here illegally? So we're more divided ideologically than ever, and I'm not sure what the solution is to that. Because on every single issue, there's a pushback from the left, which kind of, I don't know if you want to harp any more about Minnesota.
Well, the last thing I want to say is, Scripture tells us, be wise as serpents, be innocent as doves. That analogy, I feel like it's so appropriate and so nuance for us to engage with corruptions, because I just don't think you can go into corruption in the United States right now just like a dove and be innocent, just be like, this is right and this is wrong. There are so many nuanced things that we got to get into. Yeah. I mean, William Wilberforce fought how many years to outlaw the slave trade? Yep. He had to make comprehensive, make deal. I mean, all kind of things that happen. And I feel like these are the long-term projects that we have to work on. We can't just go in there and say, we're going to cut all these different things. You're going to get kicked out. It won't happen. It's like going to be a third-party candidate. It's like it just doesn't work well. You have to build coalitions. You have to weed in out a little bit of time. You got to wait for media exposure. You got to wait for the right timing. Like that's kind of what I've sensed. It's this idea of like it's the long game. We got to keep our righteousness, but meanwhile we have to be wise as serpent to see what's going on. So.
Well said. And I think we have to be accurate. We don't want to be reactionary. And as you said, some of these issues are very nuanced and very layered. And so as believers, we need to make sure we have our facts straight. But just to clarify, this is not an attack on black people. This is not even an attack on Somalis. When you look at the data here, we're seeing that this is a Somali problem. 90 people have been convicted so far of this nonprofit Feeding Our Future, which was the largest COVID-related fraud operation in the U.S., and another 98 have been arrested, and the vast majority of them are Somalis. So this is clearly a Somali population exploiting our system for their own good. And that doesn't make you xenophobic. It doesn't make you racist. It doesn't make you whatever other phobic they want to apply on us. These are just the facts. So you can still love Somalians. You can still love black people. You can still love Africans. You can still love it. This is not, I'm trying to say, this is not a race issue. This is a fraud issue. The left always makes everything about race, makes everything about religion, and again, cry crocodile tears. One elected official here was like, immigration is the strength of our nation. And we've talked about this again. No one argues that immigration has not been good for America, but it's proper immigration, vetted immigration where, I don't know if you saw, you talked about Nick Shirley, but one of the Somalians said, "You're not allowed here in our neighborhood. This is a Somalian neighborhood. You're not allowed here." Well, this is the United States. We get to walk in whatever neighborhood we want. It's a very tribal mentality that suggests that we're here, but this is our people. We're not Americans. We're Somalians who are living in America who happen to be exploiting and stealing taxpayer dollars from hardworking Americans. So these are those nuances that just need to be loud and clear. We want to see every Somali reached with the good news of Jesus Christ, but that doesn't separate from the fact that when someone commits a crime, they need to be held accountable. And I'm glad President Trump just said, look, if we find that you're here as a naturalized citizen and you've committed a crime, you're being deported.
Let's just be very clear. If you want to come to this country from a different country and you have no plan to assimilate, then you're there just to take. Then you're a pirate.
Yep.
If you don't have a plan to, I came from a different country and I have to learn English and I have to learn the Constitution. I have to learn these values, good things.
Well, when you come here legally, you have to go through that process.
You have to go through the legal process, the paperwork, the swearing in, the learn all the things.
You pledge your allegiance to this country.
But again, I happen to have a lot of values that align with constitutional Western values. I grew up in a Christian household. But if you don't have those values and you never want to comply, then why? Then the only reason you want to come to the United States is because the wealth and the prosperity and the money. You have nothing to offer. You don't want to contribute to what they have already. You want to transform it to yours. And you want to just take the welfare. Then what's the difference between that and an invasion or being a pirate? So again, that mentality works if you communicate, if you convince the population, especially a younger population, that Americans on stolen land, that we have no right here in the first place. To which I say, then do you surrender your house, your own personal property, your personal house? Then why don't you surrender that first if that's your belief? So this is all tied in together. Like we need to connect that dot. It's not biblical or Christ-like to just say let anybody in and assimilate whatever values they have. look at the governance that God gave to the Israelites when they're birthing their nation and how much they protect their culture and their customs, because that's valuable, because division kills the nation, destroyed from the inside out. Yeah. So that's completely biblical.
So let's talk about the second tyrant.
Okay.
That has been taken out of office in his pajamas and is now sitting with his lovely wife in a prison in New York, and that's Maduro. So this is another one that has lots of nuance to it. But for the United States, it was our Delta Force to come into the largest Air Force, what I understand, largest military base, I guess in North America. South America, come in, take the leader out and his wife with no casualties.
To the Americans.
But minimal casualties across the board. Pretty amazing. And again, immediately we got liberals out with signs saying free this narco-terrorist, illegitimate leader who has, brutalized his people. I mean, he's a typical communist. Creates all kinds of squads to go out and terrorize people and punish people who speak out against what he's done. He was condemned by 50 nations that the election was illegitimate. So people ask the question, what right does the United States have to go in and take out a world leader? He's not a world leader. He's someone who stole the election and stole American property as well over there. Trashed the whole economic base of the country. And I love this. The Venezuelans are cheering in the streets, and we got Democrats in the United States. They're standing out waving Venezuelan flags and asking for this guy or demanding this guy to be released. I mean, these people are nuts. Sometimes I get very, very frustrated with that whole group of folks. I don't know what planet they're on. I don't know I don't even know how to track their thinking. But share with me your thoughts on that, because this is another one that's
very nuanced. I mean, I think a lot of the protesters, they have some paper trail that they have the same signs across different states. It happened the day afterwards.
Yeah, so did you notice the signs were already printed too?
So they were organized. They're well funded by whatever propaganda group. I forgot the name of the group. Maybe probably from Eastern sources. When I first found out about that night, I got an alert on my phone. I'll be honest, I didn't know much about the Venezuela situation. I don't know much about Moderno. My first thought is don't get us involved in another war. I don't want to be in another war. Instability, all these different things. We just go in and take out the president. Not take him out, but literally take him out to our country. Until I really dug into the history of what that looked like. And they had an election in 2024, and there's a lot of evidence produced that Maduro lost an election by a landslide, but he basically rigged the election, rigged the results. He was a tyrant. The people aren't with him. United States don't recognize him. And there's legal precedents of the United States going and taking out people that we have indictment against.
Well, not to mention that Venezuela is as close to the United States border, and this was interesting, as New York is to Texas. We're talking about a neighbor that's very, very close. It used to be a great ally of ours. And, you talk about nation building, and we can't go in and try to turn, Somalia into a liberal Western democracy. They don't have the same worldview. But that's not true of Venezuela. Venezuela has a deep democratic Judeo-Christian Western Civ foundation. It's been an incredibly prosperous nation. There's many, many godly Christian people there, and it was one of our partners. It was a wealthy partner. Of course, they have vast oil reserves. All of this oil was stolen from the people and was being sold to China, Russia, and Iran. So now we have somebody in the Western Hemisphere that's actually supporting our enemies. When I say our enemies, nations that would love to destroy us and have stated so. So I like that whole Monroe doctrine. We're not going to let anybody in our hemisphere that is going to be a threat to United States security and sovereignty. And I love what Trump says. You got to know how to take Trump. Trump always says things that just set the liberals off. He says, we're going to be running Venezuela for now. Well, what does he mean by that? Well, if you get past, the way that he says it, what he means by that is we're not going to allow some other narco-terrorist Marxist to come in and take this guy's place. We're going to make sure that that the man who should have been duly elected,
Edmundo Gonzalez,
that he gets placed back in office as he was rightfully voted in by the people, or there's a special election. But we're going to make sure that, and here's, okay, we just went in and pulled off this amazing operation. If we wanted to own Venezuela, who's stopping us? If we want, we're the powerhouse on the planet. If we want to go occupy Venezuela, we could do that. But we don't do that. We're a Christian nation. We don't go steal other people's countries. We don't go steal other people's wealth. We actually go back in and rebuild, which is something that, what nation does that? We're going to go in and help the Venezuelans reclaim their country. But we got all these liberals. What's Trump doing? He's taking over. He's being a fascist. It's like they're so stupid. They can't even understand the pain, the suffering, the poverty. 8,000, I'm sorry, not 8,000. I got my number. 8 million, I guess, Venezuelans have left their country and fled to other nations just because they're trying to survive. And it seems like the American left is much more concerned with the rights of narco-terrorists, of boat owners, right? Isn't that what they call them? Fishing boat drivers or something like. Are you people idiots? These people are a drug cartel pumping the United States with cocaine. If you want to try to pump the United States with cocaine and you're in a boat, you're going to get blown up. So please don't do that. But we have more compassion for people that hate us and who hate the average citizen than we do for good law-abiding people.
Well, this is my perspective. Like, they're the opposition party, Democrat Party, so they're always going to find something. Like, I think if Biden took out Maduro, like actually killed him, like Obama killed whatever terrorist, they would have said nothing. So we're playing politics here because many of these people who are coming against them have said in the past, like, Maduro should be taken out. And when they're challenged by it, they're like, well, no, it should be done by sanction and all these different things, not actually go in and do all these different things. And my argument is if Biden had done that, you would probably say nothing.
Absolutely.
So we're just
playing
playing
who's my favorite Democrat now?
Who?
Fetterman.
John Fetterman.
He's my favorite Democrat. Yeah. Here's why. Because I don't agree with him on most of his policies, but he's at least got common sense and honesty. Like, well, if somebody does something right that's a Republican, he can at least say, that was a good job. Whereas the rest of the Democrats are so ideologically blinded, they can't even, they can't even give a hand clap for anything
that's human. That's just human nature. Because here's the thing. They don't trust Trump. They don't trust Trump's administration. And guess what? I get it, because I don't trust Biden's administration. Biden could be doing something really good. And my first thought, I hope I'm objective enough to look in the long term, but my first thought is, why is he doing that? Because they don't trust Trump. This to me is huge, is that our human emotions, DNR, always can very easily override objectivity. And that we have to watch out sometimes and really look at. It's so interesting how many people on my feed right now, they're like trashing what Trump is doing. And then someone posted their own post about what they said about Maduro. And they have to go back and like say, well, I didn't mean that, all these different things. It's just like, because at the end of the days, we want to be right. We want to be more right than we want to actually align with the truth, right? Because and that's biblical too. That's speaking to our nature, that we want to be our own gods. We want to be right more than what's aligned with reality.
Well, we've hit on this, but it seems like the desire to be in power, which is what you get.
That's the other thing.
Which is what you get when you jettison your Judeo-Christian values, right? When you make the state God.
Yep.
We're seeing the fruit of this now, and it's really scary because it used to be, it didn't matter D or R who was in power. You actually believed that they loved America.
Yep.
They might have a different way of loving America, but you didn't question the fact that they loved this country.
You didn't think the other side was Nazis and Hitler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at now. And like you said,
whatever Hitler did, Hitler could cure cancer. He's doing it because he's corrupt and he hates us.
Yep. And then when you see what's coming out of our universities, the poison there, the protests. I'm looking again at what's happening over in Australia, looking at what's happening in Europe, where there's 30 people a day being arrested for simply posting things on social media that the government, the globalistic, government over there doesn't like. I mean, we're becoming, I'm saying a Trump-led conservative America is becoming more and more isolated in the entire world. I mean, it used to be even the Europeans would be on our side, or the Australians would be on, or the Canadians would be on our side. And yet I'll say at the same time, there is a movement, especially in South America. We've seen this.
Argentina, El Salvador.
Yeah, of pro, Christ conservative leadership that's emerging as people have had enough of all this corruption and tyranny. So anyway, I'm not depressed about it all. It's just, I know the Lord reigns over it all, but it's disturbing just in my lifetime to see the polarization that's happened, even in America.
The polarization is exactly what you said. It's because we no longer have a God. So everyone, like you said, it's about power. It's about being right. It's about feeling good in my own perspective. That's why you have polarization, because everyone's their own God, right? There's no transcendent God. Yeah. Everyone's their own God. Of course you're going to have polarization.
Right. If something doesn't transcend above you and I's opinion, right, then we have no basis for coming together.
It's all about narrative. It's all about rhetoric, right?
And I saw, who's the guy that did the Avatar movies, Cameron?
James Cameron, yeah.
Yeah, he said the problem with trying to regulate AI is that we do not have the same moral compass. So who's ever trying to make the rules about it is going to be at odds with a whole nother segment of people. Because as you pointed out, there is no transcendent source of truth. And we're left to our own opinions, and that is the recipe for terrorist fascism, totalitarianism, and every other nastyism that's out there.
So you literally cannot argue about the most common sense things.
Yeah.
It could be like, hey, why don't we have less corruption? No, that's controversial. Because within that, there's nuance beyond that. So,
hey, we got rid of a bad guy. Yeah. No, Trump's the bad guy. We got rid of bad people bringing drugs into our country. No, they need due process. Whatever. I mean, it's just nothing.
Again, and the good question for Republicans and Democrats: if the guy you don't like doing it, what would you say the same thing? And this is a question I have to question myself. If Biden took out Moderna, what would I say? I was like, because I fundamentally don't trust Biden, I might look at it with skeptical eyes too. So again, we have to ask ourselves these deeper questions. What is the implication of all of this? And this situation in Venezuela is not settled down yet. It's still complicated. Who's going to be in charge? There's a lot going on. The jury's still out.
I'll end with this. Sunday we had a lot of ministry at the altar, and I looked up at a young man who was standing there, and he introduced himself to me, and he said, "I'm Venezuelan." And we prayed, and again, I never know sometimes what I'm going to say on Sunday morning, but I mentioned the fact that there's a lot of Venezuelans who are celebrating today because their prayers have been answered. And he said he has a lot of his own family members that are still in Venezuela, and as we prayed, he was moved, and obviously, pouring his heart out to the Lord that there would be a peaceful transition here, and that stability would be restored into that country.
And that's what we got to pray for right now. Now is a real crucial time. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tension. I mean, can't imagine my family's in there right now because the military is still in charge in some bad people's hands, and what's going to happen. So pray for Venezuela right now. Yeah,
anyway, great to be back with you guys. We hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and we're really looking forward to seeing you next week. All right, have a great week.